Let's talk about journal entries. Journal entries are interesting because they do not work like most of the other things in Foundry. You'll notice I have the journal tab, or the journals layer selected, and there is no option here to drag journals or make journals. You can select this pin to toggle notes display. I believe that comes from DF Architect, but that might be standard now. It's been a while. And you can also clear the notes in the scene. This will not remove their journal entries that correspond with them. That's because journals are stored in this journal entries tab. And you'll notice that I have some journals here. I'm going to actually use a journal from Bailiwiki Towns because that is something I already have. And you'll notice if I open up here, it's basically his note here. You don't need to read this. This is Bailiwiki has this up. You can find this here where he publishes in his module. But this is basically the note that I'll be using for this, just because I am too lazy to make a note, and most of my notes are sensitive to particular sessions that I have not finished yet. So you'll notice that that journal's there. If we open it up, it sees all these things. And there's some other journals that Bailiwiki has here that work with multi-level token and other various things. We're not going to talk about them in this video. We're just going to talk about how they work in scene. So you'll notice I've dragged this out, and by default, this is the way that all journals look when they're dragged out. They have an icon size of 40 pixels, which makes them tiny. They have this default icon that comes from Foundry itself. If you have a note, they have these font settings. So if I wanted to say, hey, what's the text symbol for this? Test. And then I can change the font size of that. And you'll notice if I update that and then mouse over it, it will say test. We're actually going to make a journal real quick, actually, why not? Let's create an entry in our journals here. And let's put it in my personal folder. Let's just say journal testing. And you'll notice that as I made that, it popped up. This is actually the folder selected, so you'll see the folders that I have on the server. And then this is a testing note for journals. And then save. One thing to note, and this is particularly important if you are running a remote server through a server hosting site, typing in journals does not do anything on the server end until you click save. So if you spend a long time typing, like an hour worth of text, and your server has an automatic shutdown timer, your Foundry will shut down in the middle of your journal. Save yourself the frustration and do that properly. Save it every so often. Move a token around so that interrupts the server sleep process. But that's all right. There's this show players button. You'll notice that as I click that, it popped up this message. If you click that, it will any player actively connected to the tabletop will receive that note. So you can send that to them, and they'll be able to see it. There's this text option. That basically opens up this window. Right now it will do nothing because I'm already on the text tab. Double clicking it will minimize that. If I go image, I can select an image for this. So I'll go over to, I have a bunch of things in Walnut, tiles, custom, we'll go tongue cards, decorative, we'll go banners and flags, why not? Armory banner gold, select that, and then you'll notice that that is the image associated with that journal. So if we go to image, that's how it looks. And then what we'll do is we will open up our folders, drag out that journal, and you'll notice that that doesn't change the label. That image portion has nothing to do with how it shows up in the scene. You'll also notice that that is stuck there because of wall height. Sometimes that happens with wall height. It's just a matter of that. I have lost my journal. Fun. Okay. And this map is a very large grid. I'll set it to be the same size as my grid so that it's visible. And you'll notice that I can see that. Right now, if I were to log in as a player, I would not see that. So I can have this on my map as the DM, and my players can't see it, but if I want to write a note to remind myself of something, I can put it there. Again, if I go to image, it will show this image. And if I click show players, right now it would show that image content. The text and image content are unique from each other. And so if I click this, it will show the text content, and if I click this, it will show the image. So if I set this to be like the cover of a book, I'd have if I did my prep work, I'd have a book cover with the title of the book, and then if someone opened the book, I would play the text for them. But let's say we want to have a journal where players can read it. So, we want to make sure that our players can read and see our journals. Then you'll want to configure the permissions on that. And you'll notice that I have some players in my campaign. I don't want to set it for any particular player. I want everyone to be able to observe it. And now that note here on the map would be visible. And if we want to open up the screen to edit this note, we would double right click. Double left click will open that note. You can change where the text displays. So if I want to display the text, I can do it on the center, and you'll notice that it displays there. The wall height pop-up is not particularly useful right now, but I'm not 100% sure I remember how to turn it off, but that's all right. You can also set that to other locations around the tile. Change the text color. So let's say I want it to be a little more eye-popping. Do that. So that text is red. These default icons are SVGs that do not tint. So if we change the tint, I don't believe it will change how it looks. Yeah. Oh, it does. I am completely wrong on that as usual. I guess when I was testing that the last time, I must not have saved it like I just did just now. So you can change that tint. And if this is set up properly, which I'm fairly certain it did, players should be able to see that. There's some other things you do with Journal with multi-level token using journals as switches. And notice for Bailey Wiki, there are these secret doors and stairs journals. Those have to do with the way that he has automation set up in the scenes. So you can certainly do it for those. I don't. You'll notice that I have some that I've set up a long time ago. But you don't need to use those. We'll talk about that if we ever talk about multi-level token. But for now, you should be able to see that journal. And like I said, that icon is basically unique, so I can move this around, edit it. It does not change the journal itself. So I could drag another copy of this out and have a different note that links to the same journal entry. And then as the DM, you can toggle notes display, so that shows up on other layers. So that can be very useful if you are trying to run something and then have your note available. And with that, we will wrap up on notes.